Now we continue our study looking at With Christ in the Crucible. This one's entitled The Birdcage. And I suppose the imagery that we're supposed to be thinking about is being trapped, like a wild bird that is caught and placed in a birdcage. Sadly, all too often an experience that you see, especially when you travel around the world, people taking beautiful wild birds, putting them in a cage because they may sing well or they look beautiful, whatever. They want to trap them and catch them and keep them and lock them up. It's almost like imprisonment. And we can perhaps feel that way too, that we are these birds of freedom that now have been trapped because of our own choices and that of others, because of sin, because of evil in our world and so on. And the material we're given this time focuses particularly on the experience of Israel, particularly as they left Egypt, go into the desert. There in Exodus 14. See what the people are saying. They tell Moses this: "Were there no graves in Egypt that you had to bring us out here into the desert to die? What have you done to us by making us leave Egypt? Didn't we tell you back in Egypt, leave us alone so that we can go on being slaves to the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to be Egyptian slaves than to die here in the desert." What a statement. Had they so quickly forgotten what their experience was there in Egypt? Not only were they slaves, they were beaten, mistreated. They had a terrible experience there, and yet they were saying it was better back there in Egypt than our experience here. And their trust in God, I have to say, from what we read here, these people who were complaining, was absolutely minimal. They needed to see God in operation. They saw the Dead Sea part. They saw God provide them with manna. They saw so many miracles, water in the wilderness. And yet there in Exodus 15, when they come to this place called Mara, which means bitter, there was bitter waters, they complain again, saying, we want water, we want fresh water. And God has to work through Moses to quell their complaints there again. They moaned at Rephidim once more because there was no water. Why have you brought us to this place? There isn't any water here. Don't you trust God enough to provide you with water? He's brought you out of Egypt. The whole Exodus experience, through the Red Sea, destroying the Egyptian army, brought you all the way through, and yet you're still complaining. And the tragedy is, as we see in Exodus and Numbers, that God's people generally are doing just that. They're moaning that they don't have the food they like. They remember the onions and the garlic in Egypt and the melons and all the fish they could eat, forgetting that they were mistreated slaves, and God is taking them on the way to the promised land if they will trust in Him. What does that then say to us? Do we see ourselves as being in this birdcage experience? Are we moaning and complaining? Are we saying, God, where are you? What are you doing for me? Why is this water bitter? Why am I here where there is no water? Why don't you give us good food? Why don't you provide us with things that we like? They are really like obnoxious children, I would want to say. And I'm afraid we can be like that too. The birdcage experience is not a pleasant one. And we may think that that's where we are, but God is leading us out of the birdcage, out of slavery in Egypt, to His promised land, where we can truly be free, where we can experience all that God has planned for us from the beginning, the way it was, Eden lost to Eden restored. And He promises us that we won't be locked up like birds in cages, but that we will be set free. Yes, we go through tough experiences in this life. We see sadness, we see depression, we see illness, sickness, death. But God promises that He will wipe away those tears from our eyes, and that we will be home forever with Him, where we'll need no light, no sun or moon to give us light, because God Himself will be there, and He will be our God, and we shall be His people. That's the answer to the experience of the birdcage.